Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and this is my twice weekly webcast where we look at some topical news, some occasionally controversial views, and I often offer you some better biking tips. So, what have we got on the show today? Well, there's been an incident on the M25 where a motorcycle going the wrong way hit a police officer. The popular press, I think, has been misleading road users on the upcoming highway code changes, and I'll point you at a reasonably reliable article. If you fancy a piece of Hollywood history, John Wayne's SL350 is going under the hammer tomorrow out in the US. A Swedish startup called STILLRIDE folding their bike into shape using industrial origami. Um, Quickie on Jack Miller, his positive COVID test has postponed Ducati's Moto GP launch. Pyramid are producing a lockable storage hump, but at an eye-watering price. Backers and buyers are still waiting for a speaker-free music player 2 years on. And finally, we'll finish off with today's riding tip. Training for skills, pushing the envelope, margins for error, and overconfidence as we're all looking to get back into riding again. That's probably a good time to bring out an article on bike training. Right, so yes, there we go. Anything else to tell you about? Well, don't forget the survival skills gift vouchers are still available. They are available till the end of February, so you've got just over a month to buy one. If you do purchase one, you'll find that they're worth rather more than the face value that you bought them for when you redeem them against a training course. And there's even one that you can redeem against an online training session. So even if you're not in my part of the world, you can still benefit from my training. Right, okay, so before I go on with the news, good morning to John and Nigel, who've both looked in. And don't forget, if you have any comments, any questions, drop me a line using the comment stream here. I'll try to answer as we go along. If I can't do it on air, I will definitely do it when we get to the end of the show. So I do respond to all comments, so just drop me a line. And Nigel has also looked in. Good morning to you, Nigel. Right, okay, so we have given you the list of what's on. So news story that has been on the local news and Kent area as well. A police officer was seriously injured and had to be airlifted to a London hospital after he was hit by a motorcycle on the M25. Now, full report is still we're still waiting to see exactly what happened, but the incident appears to have happened on the section near Swanley in Kent, obviously. Around 4:05 on Sunday evening. The incident was apparently caught on numerous dash cams and videos, not really surprising, I suppose. And so there have been photos and video clips uploaded to social media. And from those, viewers have identified the bike as a KTM Duke. Now, it's believed the bike was stolen, and it was being driven the wrong way along the clockwise carriageway near to junction 3. A 26-year-old man who has been named as Charlie Bishop had reportedly attempted to dodge police and stingers. Those are the sort of spiky metal sheets that they throw under wheels of vehicles to puncture their tyres. And he was arrested. The police officer is now reported to be in a stable condition, and not surprisingly, Kent police are asking for witnesses, and particularly those with dash cam footage or even privately held CCTV to come forward to assist with the investigation. Right, so okay. Don't forget, you can set a reminder to get this show. It's every Wednesday and Sunday at 11 a.m. At the moment, we're on BST. So do pop along and see the show twice a week. If you can't catch it here, it does come on YouTube and, of course, Facebook as well. You can catch up later. Right, so something I've been talking about over on my Facebook page, also my new coffee page, is the changes to the highway code. That will now, barring a very last second objection in the House of Commons, be coming into force on Saturday. Now, I've tried to be pretty objective about what the changes are. I have tried to flag up what I see as potential problems. It doesn't mean those problems will happen and it will be carnage out there, as some people seem to have interpreted what I've been saying. What I've done is simply tried to make you aware of what could happen by looking beyond the rather simple examples that have gone out with the DFT's press releases on what's happening. For example, they have shown a car turning left, having to wait for a cycle coming up the inside or for a pedestrian to cross the road. Now, that's a pretty simplistic scenario, frankly, and much more complex questions are what will happen if a vehicle's in the middle of turning right when a pedestrian steps out. It's basically having to double guess what a pedestrian may or may not do. Do you do that after you've committed yourself to the turn? Do you do it before you've committed to the turn and just sit in the middle of them until it's absolutely clear of pedestrians? That's certainly not going to work up Regent Street in London, for example. So yes, while some people have said that, well, quite a few actually, have said that I'm worrying about nothing with varying degrees of politeness, there are plenty of people who share my concerns. But what I have tried to do is share my concerns rationally. And to do that, what I have actually done is I've worked from a source document. And I'm putting the link up on screen now so that you can actually see what I've been working for. But as I've been talking about, much of the press hasn't been nearly subjective. There's a story in the Express talking about driver rage. Other top papers have been talking about drivers being fined £1,000 for not using the Dutch Reach door opening technique I mentioned on Sunday. That's inaccurate. The Mail, the Sun, the Telegraph, even the Times have all had some pretty inaccurate reports over the last week or two. But what's even scarier, frankly, is how many people are still insisting they know nothing about these changes. Many of those happen to be on my regular bike forum. And some of the excuses were, nope, I've not seen your articles. Yeah, okay, fair enough. I've only 7,000 followers on Facebook. Nope, not seen it in the press. Well, fair enough. Again, newspapers are struggling for readership these days. Not everybody wants to go online and read news. Nope, I haven't seen it in the bike press, which I frankly find hard to believe. Bikers who don't read the bike press, come on, pull the other one. But if you do want a reasonably accurate assessment, it is slightly biased towards cyclists, but what I would suggest is that you have a read of this one. Morning, Kevin. Kevin's looked in. What's he got to say? Let's just put that up on screen. Letter, that'll be Baroness Veer, stating that, yes, well, that's the standard answer, really. Unfortunately, yes, that they'd have worked with representative organisations. As I understand it, they got the recommendations from representative organisations and then put them to everybody else and basically overrode objections. That's my interpretation, I hasten to point out. You may get other interpretations from other people, which leads me neatly into the next thing I was going to say about this, actually, because whilst each of us are putting our own spin on this, I was actually quite surprised to listen to a short interview with Neil Gregg, who is the Director of Policy and Research at IAM Road Smart, on LBC a couple of days ago. And I have to say, it was a little bit negative about the changes. For example, when talking about the advice to cyclists to position to the centre of the lane in certain circumstances, I will add, a lot of drivers are going to think that somebody cycling in the middle of the lane in front of them is doing it deliberately to slow them down. That leads to conflict and road rage and inappropriate overtaking, said Neil Gregg. Now, I am aware, having suffered from it myself in the past that longer interviews are often cut short to produce nice meaty sound bites for the media, which is why, incidentally, politicians often ignore a question and simply repeat a pre-prepared statement over and over again, because it means it's impossible to then quote them out of context. You may not get the answer to your question, but you certainly can't fabricate something that they didn't actually say by chopping bits of the statement around. But even so, I do think that the negativeness was something that the IAM shouldn't really have been putting out, because it seems to me to be just stoking the fires being lit by all the bash the driver reports in the popular press. So I know it's the Institute of Advanced Motorists, but surely a big chunk of their remit is to try to help their members, and anyone else who drives, incidentally, to see the roads from the alternative perspective of the cyclist and pedestrian, not just to promote their own members' interests. And frankly, that really should be, that education should be the goal of any organisation. That's my opinion. You're welcome to disagree with it. I'll be interested to hear your opinions. Um, so, um, we can nail down into minute detail on this. John Sinclair asks, if cyclists are allowed to ride in the centre of the lane for safety, do we need cycle lanes? They can ride anywhere they like. There aren't no restrictions on where they can and can't ride, unless there is a road which is designated no cycles, in which case they cannot ride down it. The Limehouse Link Tunnel, for example, is one such road. The choice to ride in a cycle lane or not is up to the rider. If you look at a lot of cycle lanes, people are allowed to park in them during non-rush hours. So would I ride in the cycle lane and then duck in and out around the parked cars? Probably not. And again, if you've got an obstructed view coming up to a junction, would you be sitting far left on your motorcycle? I doubt it. So I'm not really sure why a cyclist should do it either. We need a bit of give and take on this. We need some understanding of everybody's issues on the roads. I don't think the highway code changes have gone about this the right way, but hey ho, what do I know? Anyway, right, let's move on from the highway code, because I know that that's going to be a serious bone of contention for some time to come. Right, so where was I? Yes, if you fancy a little bit of Hollywood history, here's your chance. That there is John Wayne, big leggies, 1971 Honda SL 350 motorcycle. So it seems that John Wayne, although he's best known for riding horses in westerns, also enjoyed riding motorcycles, and that is his own bike. And it's claimed it was actually used for the 1971 movie Big Jake, which I have to admit I don't remember at all. Whether I've seen it or not, I can't recall. The SL 350 in its day was hardly a rocket ship. The 326cc four-stroke twin, pushing the bike along via a 5-speed gearbox. The bike actually put out somewhere around about 30 horsepower, and it's probably just as well it wasn't much more than that, because I have memories of the front brake's dubious ability to stop my own 250 only too well. If you're interested, that bike is going under the hammer. RM Sotheby's will provide the original ownership transfer document that proves that Wayne owned the bike, which lists apparently his last address before he died. So if you want to get hold of that, it's going on sale in Arizona tomorrow, January 27. So you still have time to count your pennies, but you will need a pretty big piggy bank to afford it. Estimates for the fully restored machine are running at between $60,000 and $80,000. Now, just come back to that picture for a moment. One thing that you'll notice if you look at it is that it uses a very conventional steel tubing chassis. And if you look at other motorcycles, most motorcycles still use a very similar mode of construction. They're often tubing with the suspension bolted on either end and an engine hung somewhere underneath. Yes, sometimes the tubing is aluminium, sometimes it's a sort of interesting box section shape, and it may have cast aluminium sections welded to it at either end to fit bits like the rear swing arm too, or the headstock. But essentially, the vast majority of motorcycle design is still the same. Even the bikes that use the engine as a stressed member usually have a steel backbone or aluminium backbone frame somewhere above them. So, what is new in the world? Well, a company called STILLRIDE is aiming to produce a sustainable e-motorcycle and e-scooter range using what they describe as a groundbreaking process dubbed or industrial origami. The bike is the brainchild of best friends Tu Baya and Jonas Naivang, who possess backgrounds that it says span the worlds of fashion, industrial design, and engineering. So, what are we actually looking at here in terms of a bike? Well, this is it. Let me get that picture up again quickly. There it is. Now, predictably, it's electric powered in this day and age, and you're probably wondering what industrial origami is. I certainly was. Well, it turns out to be a technique where robots fold single sheets of steel to create intricate, lightweight, and durable structures. Now, it's said to use fewer raw materials and to reduce labor costs. And compared to a traditional scooter, this SUS1 is said to require 70% fewer components, driving a 25% reduction in labor costs and a 20% reduction in material costs, which all sounds well and good. Now, the company has also raised £2.5 million to bring their first product to the mass market. So that it's that sport utility scooter one. That's what SUS1 stands for. STILLRIDE will go on to use this technique, they say, to add cargo bikes and trailers to their product range. Now, rather than ship complete bikes, the company is actually aiming to create a manufacturing process that allows the steel sheets to be flat packed and shipped to local factories across Europe, where they'll be folded into shape and then fitted with a hub motor and a battery pack. Now, I have to say that in principle, that sounds good, but it would rely on a high-tech piece of equipment in a factory in each market to actually press the bikes to shape. I don't know how expensive these robots are, but I can't imagine they're cheap. Stillfold says it reduces the environmental impact of the production. They also plan to launch in Europe, and they claim that they've already got 90,000 people on the waiting list for this particular bike. And I have to say that's a pretty amazing order book if it's actually orders, genuine orders, and not just people who've emailed them for information for a bike that's not yet seen the light of day. So that's a STILLRIDE. Let's hope it's not stillborn. So, all right, every now and again, of course, I do see other interesting products on my here it is. I've got the wrong photo up, but I've corrected myself. There it is. An interesting idea that pops up on my newsfeed. This one is from Pyramid Plastics, as you can see, and you can also see that what you're looking at is a sort of a seat hump thing. It fits the Tracer 900 and Tracer 900 GT. It struck me as one of those simple ideas that I'm surprised nobody's actually thought of before. What's just a little bit difficult to see in that picture is that if I can perhaps zoom in on the item at the bottom there, is that what you've actually got is a storage unit. You unlock the existing pillion seat and remove it, and then you replace it with this seat pod, which has 5 litres of storage space built into it. So basically, it's lockable because it replaces the lockable seat pad. It uses the original seat locking mechanism, so it's secured and removed by the key in the usual way. So there you have, according to the advertising, a secure storage space, which looks like an original part of the bike. Any problems with that? Well, I have to say, I did look at it and think, well, I'm not entirely sure it looks just like the original piece of the bike. If I can sort of zoom in on the thing sat on the bike there. I kind of, it's a fairly unpleasant sort of matte plastic thing. And the other thing I noticed is it's got a huge gap at the front under where the seat goes. So I'm not sure about the execution of that particular object. So um, and being matte plastic, it's not exactly stealth like the advertising suggests. I certainly wouldn't want to leave vehicle documents in it overnight, and I certainly wouldn't want to leave a wallet in it while I wander off to the loo either. But for keeping first aid and puncture repair kits or something on a solo day run, it could be quite useful. But for one thing, now, how much would you be prepared to pay for that piece of molded black plastic which bolts in place of your passenger seat? £30, £40? Well, maybe 50. That would be my top limit for sure. And I'd be much happier paying 30 quid for it. How much do Pyramid Plastics want? No less than £160, not even 159.99. That's a fairly astonishing £32 per litre for storage. Right, so what else have we got for you today? Well, something else that caught my attention. Let me again try and get this up on screen for you. I seem to have got everything out of order. I spent ages sorting this out. Here we go. Let me get that up on screen. There we are. That is the Moto Pro helmet audio and communication system. So basically, what happened was I was reading my bike forum as usual, and somebody posted a link up to a video review to this rather unusual intercom and music player. So how does it work? Well, basically, it's a device that sits on the outside of the helmet, and as you can see, it says no wires. And there are no wires because there are no speakers either. And it allows you, it says, to use the phone to listen to music, even chat with other riders, all without internal speakers. The Pro delivers the most powerful helmet audio sound with our noise cancelling mic and unlimited rider range on the intercom. Fully wireless Bluetooth 5, unparalleled power, comfort, and safety. So that's what it is. Well, yeah, again, it's one of those things where it caught my attention because it's a bit of a pain to pull the padding out of a helmet and have to fit your speakers in the sort of the slots in the ear, if there are such slots, and to wonder whether those earpieces will actually fit comfortably. Mine are, I would say, are tolerable rather than completely inobtrusive, even though they're pretty slender. So basically, something with no wires or lumps tucked inside the helmet would be great. Now, how do you do away with speakers? Well, the answer is that according to Domio, the system works via micro vibration technology, which transforms your helmet into a surround sound system. So how does this actually work? Well, I had a quick look online, and they have a question in their FAQs. Unfortunately, that's the answer. So clearly what they have done is actually left the placeholder text in there because they don't appear to have an answer for themselves to this question. So I was a little bit surprised by that. Obviously, the website needs a bit of work there. So I did Google. Quick reference to micro vibration actually turned up, but it was a bunch of references to vibration in spacecraft caused by the spacecraft's own moving parts, presumably disturbing sensitive equipment. Nothing about playing music. Now, of course, solid surfaces can be used to transmit sounds. There are small speakers that can be put on a glass table or something like that, and they use the glass to generate a more intense sound. So it's reasonable in a way that the shell could be used to transmit sound too. There's just one problem that occurred to me instantly. The shell that the vibrating sound device is attached to is actually on the outside of a layer of polystyrene. And one thing we know about polystyrene is it's very good at sound insulating. And inside that, there's another layer of foam. So how well would the sound get through this? Well, there's actually the review on Web Bike World on YouTube does note that the device is less effective on helmets where there's a lot of padding over the ears. They also noted it made a lot of noise outside the helmet, so that's how it transfers the sound to the shell, by creating a lot of external noise. So that was me out at that point anyway. But what if you buy one and you're not all that impressed? Well, what if you want to return it? Well, again, here's their return policy. Read that carefully. Doesn't seem to be particularly relevant to their return policy, does it? It's the same line, in fact, which is about whether or not the device is shockproof and waterproof. So there's some questions there to be asked about their policies. And then I noticed that the claim was for unlimited range for the intercom. Well, now even using the latest Bluetooth 5, that's a pretty incredible claim. Now, my own Bluetooth headsets have a range of several hundred meters line of sight, and that is pretty good for what was originally intended to connect things like computer mice to a computer. So that claim's completely nonsensical. But how are they doing with their reviews? Because maybe that would give you an overview of how good their piece of equipment actually is. Well, have a look at this. That's their own review on their own website. 4.7 out of 5, based on 402 reviews. And scrolling across the bottom are half dozen one-line reviews, which use expressions like "love it," "amazing," "hell yeah," and "wow." Now, the earliest of these was actually dated mid-August last year, 2021, and I noticed they were often badly spelled. So lots of warning bells now starting to ring, particularly as the advert says ships late January. So maybe that was late January last year, maybe it's late January this year, I don't know. And then I noticed that the video which I had glanced at actually has the obligatory show more button underneath, and that point I noticed it said, warning, this product is subject to much controversy and consumer uproar due to the manufacturer's poor communication and failure to reliably deliver the product. Many people claim to have paid for the Domio but not receive it. We've asked Domio to connect with us to present their side of the story, but after an initial response they've gone radio silent, so unquote. And then I went off to see their Trustpilot page because somebody had actually tracked that down. And somebody said that the final review, which is on there, is 16th of December last year, so just over a month ago. If I could give no stars, that would be too many. The writer here claimed that he'd been promised delivery. It hadn't turned up on a couple of occasions, and he'd even been given a delivery number which didn't track back to any parcel that he could find. The first review, 11 pages earlier, goes back to May 2020, and it was for an order made in February, another 1-star non-delivery. Now, it seems that the product first appeared on Indiegogo and Kickstarter, so there were many reviews from backers of the project. At the time, it was still just a project, and many of these have been waiting months for devices. It appears that some did get them but complained about the volume and the clarity of the sound, and then they attempted to return them for refunds with no success, which possibly connected with the lack of a refund policy. One review dating from August 2020 apparently followed an order placed in 2018. He quoted what appeared to be a customer service response from early July, saying that he couldn't get a refund as his funds had already been allocated to producing your Domio Moto. I'm not sure how that's how consumer law would see it, but anyway, hey ho. That was July 2019. Delivery was promised for August. As of June 2020, he was still being told that he'd be informed when his order was ready to ship. And I noticed, incidentally, that in the customer service response, they misspelled the word receive. So, alarmingly, there are 241 reviews on Trustpilot. 94% are 1 star. Just 3% say excellent. Domio don't seem to care. They've not flagged any responses as unreasonable. They've not replied to any negative reviews either. So personally, I think you'd be mad to go and spend the $299. I think that's Canadian dollars. I'm not sure, it might be US, but they're still asking for this product. Right, okay. As our time is rapidly rocketing on, I'll hold on to the Moto GP story until next week and go straight into the final bit, which is the better biking part. Now, we have a couple of comments here. Martin says, I owned a CL350, the scrambler version, and he said it was free, so I loved it. Well, yeah, that would, I think most people would quite enjoy a free bike of any sort. Mike says, Norton featherbed frame. Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing that we're still looking at. Kevin says, deer scarer whistle, interesting products. Yes, opinions mixed, yes. As you can't hear them, hard to say whether they work or not. Yeah, okay, so, all right, on to the last thing, last item. I just want to say, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show, if you find the entertaining, useful, whatever, do come over to my coffee page. There's the address. Drop me a line over there. You can buy me a coffee, and if you do so, £3 gets you access to over 800 better biking articles for a month. But anyway, on with the final point today. As it's getting to the end of January, and there are some promises of some warmer weather not too far ahead, hopefully, people are beginning to think about training again. So today's post is about training for skills, about pushing the envelope, about margins for error, and about overconfidence. Now, fundamentally, training in hazard awareness, risk assessment, and risk management is an essential counterweight to training in rider skills. And if we don't get that balance right, or if we ignore the hazard awareness and risk aspect altogether, then I think it's easy for riders to become overconfident, particularly as most of us, certainly when we're younger and certainly up to our first big crash, probably have something of a false sense of indestructibility. So the problem that I see with a lot of conventional training is that when it's combined with a relative lack of experience, it can lead us to become overconfident in our abilities and take us into situations that we're not competent to handle. Now, I think this is a real issue, and I think it is something that all riders taking training should be aware of. Now, there is a little line in the very back end of motorcycle roadcraft which actually warns us of overconfidence after training. So one way I think we should see training is to understand how it increases our margins for error if we don't use the extra skills we've got as an excuse to push to the limit. Now, what do I mean here? Why do we take training? The usual kind of answers I'll get to that question will be to be a better or safer rider or to gain confidence. Now, let's look at the safer rider idea first. As I've said many times, there is no such thing as safety on a motorcycle, and anyone who tells us that training makes riding safer is kidding us and themselves. So that's why we need to think in terms of risk. Now, in very simple terms, risk is the chance of something going wrong multiplied by the impact on us when it does go wrong. So we do need a really good grasp of what can go wrong and how much it will hurt if it does go wrong. So that means understanding what actually creates a threat to our health. That's basically what's defined as a hazard. So we need to understand what actually are hazards as we ride. And then we need to know where we're going to find those hazards. And we also need to know why a particular hazard creates a risk. For example, until you know that cars pull out in front of you at junctions, it's easy to intellectually be told that a car is a hazard at a junction. But until we know that, it's very difficult to actually judge just how risky it is. But once we do have a grasp of understanding that cars do really genuinely pull out in front of motorcyclists all the time, then we start to know where we're looking for them and why we're looking for them. So that's how we begin to assess and have a better understanding of how we can potentially manage that risk. Now, it all sounds the same perhaps as skills training, but it really does create a very different mindset when we look at what can go wrong rather than what am I doing that makes me safe. It's ideally, you get the same response, but you are looking at things from a completely different end of a spectrum. So what does becoming a better rider mean anyway? Now, for many, what it means is people do a training course and then go away with what they consider to be better skills. Now, skills tend to focus on vehicle maneuvering. This could be improved braking technique, it could be improved use of the throttle, it could be an ability to swerve around obstacles or techniques designed to improve cornering. It could be traveling faster over the ground. Now, this is some of those things I've just talked about. Are particularly evident in track-based training, cornering, for example, getting more lean angle and going faster around bends. And I often hear it suggested that new or less confident riders should take track training to get used to handling the bikes at higher speeds, at greater lean angles, and under harder braking. So the question we have to ask ourselves here is, what do we as a trainee come away with from one of those courses? Well, the problem is that whilst the trainee may have improved what were previously dysfunctional skills for them, there is a risk that they'll come away feeling confident to use those skills, so that when they get back out onto the road, they'll be confident at higher speeds, they'll be confident with greater lean angles, and they'll be confident with greater braking power out on the road. But it should be fairly obvious that there are potential problems there. Improving our level of skill does not change bike dynamics. No matter how good we are on the brakes, we cannot change the level of grip between our tyres and the road surface. We may be capable of braking harder before um, but we cannot change the point at which the tyres let go. So basically, the danger is that using our skills actually pushes closer to the edge of the envelope. So exploiting improved skills, riding faster at greater lean angles, braking harder, does change the demand we make on those brake dynamics. For example, very simple, if we double our speed, we quadruple our stopping distance. Even if we increase our speed by just 25%, we increase our braking distance by more than may be obvious to most riders. More speed around a bend means that either we need a bigger radius turn to get around a corner, or we use more lean angle. And once again, that means we're getting closer to the limit of grip for the tyres. And of course, if we're using more speed around the bend and the bend does something odd that we weren't expecting, we now have more speed to get rid of too. So these issues start to double up, and we can push ourselves very close to the limits. And there's a secondary problem here, which often isn't talked about. If we learn skills that allow us to perform more complex maneuvers, then because they're more complex, they nearly always have a higher risk of going wrong. For example, learning slow handling skills often encourages riders to try U-turns in confined areas. And what happens? Well, things go wrong. Years ago, I had a trainee, passed his test, came away with flying colours, did his U-turn on the road, as we used to do in those terms, came back to me, did a course, again, did very well on that course, went away, lots of confidence in his bike, despite all my warnings to be careful. And he ignored something that I had shown him on that course, and that was how to substitute a 3-point turn for a U-turn. So what did he do? He went down a narrow access lane, found that when he got to the end of it, the access gate to the place that he was trying to get to was actually locked. And rather than doing what I'd suggested in a confined space, which is basically a 3-point turn on the motorcycle, he tried to ride round in a U-turn. At which point he fell off. Having stuck his leg out to try to save the bike, he actually put a fracture in it. Fortunately, he was in a place where he could get his mobile phone out and call for help. But there he was with a broken leg, with a broken bike laying on top of him. So we do things that actually make life more risky because we get the confidence to do them. Overtaking is another classic example of training in a risky technique, which encourages people to take it with a degree of bravado, which I think is actually wrong. And finally, there's no guarantee that when we add these skills, we'll be able to use them in an emergency. This is something that Keith Code noted years ago in his Twist of the Wrist books. He realized that even highly trained riders, highly experienced track riders, tend to revert to instinct and panic when their training leads them to expect something to go right, and they don't, they go wrong. And this is when surprise kicks in, again, something I've talked about on numerous occasions, and they suffer what Keith Code called survival reactions, panic, maybe a grab of the brakes, for example, freezing so that the rider doesn't do anything, and target fixation being 3 of the most important ones. So what I'm getting at is that there is another kind of better, and that's to bring an improved understanding of what can go wrong, a heightened awareness of risk, and an ability to make better decisions when confronted by a threat. It's a very simple example. The one I talk about all the time, of course, is the Smidsy, sorry mate, I didn't see you collision. First of all, we need an understanding that the driver can fail to see a motorcycle, even when to us it seems that we should be perfectly visible to the driver of the car. And again, if you want more info on that, check out Science of Being Seen and my work on that at scienceofbeingseen.org. Only when we get that understanding can we have an awareness that there is a genuine risk that even a driver who appears to be looking straight at us hasn't seen us. And when we've achieved that, we can put that to work with our better skills that we've learned. We can put in strategies based on our ability to brake harder and swerve harder to help manage the risk. We can also use a whole bunch of other strategies, of course, slowing down, changing position to improve lines of sight, sounding the horn, simply mentally preparing to take evasive action. But the only way that they are going to become automatic is if we are taught to use them as part of training. If we are simply taught hard braking in isolation, as we do on the basic bike test, as most riders will do when they're on some advanced training. I mean, I do it myself. I teach, I take people to an empty car park to practice, but we have to put that in context with the emergency that we're going to come across. And so next week, one of the things I'll be talking about is using a technique called visualization, which actually utilizes the brain's own simulator to work through some of these exercises. But to come back to today, the survival skills approach to advanced motorcycle training is, rather than push closer to the edge of the envelope, I aim to help riders increase their margin for error. Instead of using our ability to brake harder to carry more speed, I tried to get people to see that extra braking power can be used to stop in shorter distances in emergencies. Instead of being able to lean over further to increase cornering speed, then again, what I aim to do is teach people that they can use that margin for error when they come across a corner where the bend is actually tightening up. That's it really for today. I think hopefully you found that sort of interesting. I've whittled on again a bit today. Don't forget the Elevenses is on Wednesdays and Sundays. So the next one of these shows is Sunday. Xmas vouchers I've mentioned. The next webcast is the Science of Being Seen, and that'll be on Wednesday, 2nd of February. The link is actually up in the header for this show if you're interested. So that's just a couple of weeks away now. And the 2nd of March rather, will be another talk, and this one I'll be looking at group riding on video. So that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in, and hopefully see you on Sunday for the next show. And if you're riding out there this week, do try to stay shiny side up.